Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. I hereby call the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Burkhart. Here. Representative Doggett. Representative Haynes. Representative Miller. Representative Moon. Here. Chairman Crawford.
Present.
Chairman Rudd.
I'm here.
Chairman Rudd, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Today we have 4 bills on the calendar. First bill, HB 0169 by Vice Chairman Wright, has been taken off notice. And let's get on to item number 2. All right, first up we have HB 1045 by Chairman Kiesling. I have a motion and a second on the bill. You have no amendments, do you?
I have no amendments, Chairman.
All right, you want to tell us about your bill?
I will.
We
I'll
have
quickly.
some testimony.
Thank you. I quickly will, and thank you, Chairman and members. House Bill 1045 is just bottom line. It's relative to party registration. Now, I do have a text that I'm going to play off of for just the next couple of minutes. I know I'm cognizant of the time because of the testimony, upcoming testimony. But let me begin. We as a General Assembly in our statutes and laws have defined primary elections as an election held for a political party for the purpose of allowing members of that party to select a nominee to appear on the election ballot, general election ballot. We have told the voters that they're entitled to vote in our primary elections if they are affiliated with the political party in whose primary they seek to vote, or if they declare allegiance to the political party in whose primary they seek to vote and state that they intend to affiliate with that party. Now, this legislation actually helps, in our opinion, the voter not to violate the law, and that will be mentioned later on. What we have failed to do, though, is tell the various county election commissions how they are to recognize these members of a party. Now, that is what this, bottom line, that's what this legislation corrects. It does this by having the voters themselves tell the election commissioners or commissions their affiliation. It has the election commissions record that affiliation for the next primary election. This legislation also gives the election commissions guidance on how to handle those voters who are currently registered, and it gives political parties, both them and Republicans, the Democrats and Republicans, the option to have non-affiliated voters vote in their primaries. Now, if you will imagine for just a moment that you are a new resident moving into Tennessee, and you know, members, that we have had many of those, and they're registered and trying to vote, register to vote. Now, currently, there's 31 states that require their voters to register as an affiliation to a political party or to register as unaffiliated. If you are from one of these states, then you'll know how you feel about affiliation, and it will be no burden on you to list that affiliation on your registration application. When you go vote, you'll be given a ballot to match your affiliation, and then you vote as you normally have done. If you are from one of the other 19 states, which Tennessee is, that you do not have party affiliation registration, then again, you know how you feel about affiliation, and you answer that implied question appropriately. Should you not want to fill in the blank, then this legislation would have the election commission record you as unaffiliated. If you are a voter currently registered in Tennessee, there is no additional hindrance to you because there is nothing that you need to do. When you go vote in the next partisan primary, then as you have done in the past, you'll select the ballot that you wish, again, as you has always done, and you'll go vote. In conclusion, should you wish to change your recorded affiliation or status, this legislation makes that possible within the same limits allowed for initial registration before an election. So with that, that's my wrap, Mr. Chairman. And as I said, you're already aware of you've got a lineup of some testimony. So with that, I'll relinquish the wheel and allow you to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objections from the members, we will go out of session to hear from testimony. Seeing none, We're out of session. First up is, I'll ask all three of you, I've got 6 total. I'm going to ask the first, we have 3 seats. Ask the first 3 to come up, and we will call you in order that you called the office. Miss Lauren Pinkinson from Murray County, Bethany Torino from Murray County, and Guy Camarelli, I may have that wrong, from Davidson, Davidson County. If you would come up. If you see on the front of the speaker at the base, there's a little face that looks like a voice is coming out. If you press it and a red light comes on, that means you're active. All right. Is Bethany not here?
She's out sick.
Okay. Well, first up, Ms. Pinkston, we have you, and you're allowed 3 minutes.
Sure. Chairman Rudd and committee members, it is not lost on me that I am sitting before you today providing witness to a bill hearing with direct access to my lawmakers. My name is Lauren Pinkston, and I'm a resident of Murray County and am a voter in Tennessee District 64. I was raised as a Tennessean and taught to honor and appreciate the freedoms that so many, never knowing my name and never knowing my story, have willingly sacrificed their lives to protect. It is embarrassing to admit this on public record, but it took me moving away from the United States to understand why our legislative system is among the most sacred in the world. From 2014 to 2019, I lived and worked in Southeast Asia, where I saw how communism and the power of a single-party government robbed an entire population of its access to a voting ballot with choices. I understand the arguments for closed primaries and the goals many of your fellow legislators have expressed, both publicly to the press and privately to me. I can understand the human desire for more autonomy over a party's nominees and a desire for more cohesion within a party and a desire for more control over who is sitting in the chairs you're filling today. While I personally believe those human desires are flawed when it comes to honoring a democratic process and perfecting our republic, my concern with House Bill 1045 is more of a philosophical argument I'm afraid many Republicans in our state are not considering when it comes to limiting ballot access to citizens. As each of the Republicans on this committee have noted their faith allegiance on our General Assembly website, I want to appeal to you as a fellow believer. I was raised in the Church of Christ, so please don't hold that against me, brothers and sisters in the Baptist Church. I still think you're going to heaven. And I do want to share that the prophet Habakkuk warned to the powerful what would happen when they took more than what was theirs. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 7, the prophet speaks to human nature, saying, "Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoil for them." And I want to say that the way to protect the influence and the relevance of the Republican Party is not to strong-arm the people of Tennessee. There is not a human I have ever met who falls in line when he perceives that he is being forced into allegiance. That is the antithesis of the American character. And I encourage you to consider the long-lasting impacts of a bill that will, over time, make the Republican Party the enemy of the people of this great state. I hold conservative values and I enjoy voting in Republican primaries. I accept that my legislators will be from the Republican Party. And even if I'm not a bona fide member of the party, I hope that you will understand this bill supports an eerie resemblance to the kind of elections I witnessed in Southeast Asia. Fearing a loss of control is what's driving this bill. And as an academic in the field of sociology, I just feel a responsibility to share that leaning into that fear will produce a very result its sponsors are trying to avoid. I ask you today to vote no for HB 1045.
Thank you. What I'm going to do, members, is, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Camarelli?
Camilleri.
Camilleri, that's close.
Yeah, very.
Have you speak, and then we'll open up both of you to questions of the members. Okay. If you would, Mr. Camilleri, if you would speak next.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Rudd and committee members. My name's Guy Camilleri, and I live in House District 51. I'm here today because I recently discovered that via this bill, the House is considering closing primary elections, especially to independents and even to party members who don't pre-register, with one of the parties 29 days in advance to the primary. I'm an independent voter. With respect to Rep. Kiesling, I actually come from one of the states that has open primaries, so I've always been allowed to be independent and vote for free to choose for the best candidates that happen to be on the ballot. I've heard arguments from supporters of this bill that I would still be free to vote in the general election, Well, general elections in Tennessee, at least for the General Assembly and for congressional seats, are almost all decided in the primaries. That means folks like me will be barred from voting in the elections that actually matter. The following data is from the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. Last year, only 7% of state House districts were competitive in the general election. That means 93% of House districts were decided in the primary. 0% of state Senate districts were competitive last year. That means 100% were all decided in the primary. 0% of the congressional districts from the state were competitive last year. That means 100% were decided in the primary. I've printed out a bunch of charts and data for each of you, a packet for each of you, should you want to review the data before voting today. On another note, cost. The fiscal note attached to this bill mentions the impact to the state of $40,000 and to the counties of $103,000 for the next fiscal year. Not mentioned at all in this fiscal note, however, is the voters and election workers' education. There are approximately 4.8 million citizens of voting age in Tennessee, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. What cost is being extended to notify voters to re-register or to retrain election workers? It's very likely that the cost for those items could be in the millions with that many taxpayers and voters, and it's not captured in this fiscal note. And that cost will fall on the Tennessee taxpayers. In conclusion, the only elections that do matter here for the General Assembly and the Congress are the primaries. Yet this bill would deny independents like me the right to vote in those primaries. This bill will disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters and force millions more to declare for a party lest they be denied a chance to vote in the only elections that matter. To make matters worse, this change will likely cost the state millions of dollars not currently captured in the fiscal note. And us taxpayers will be on the hook for that. I'm respectfully asking you to vote no today on this bill. Thank you for your time.
Members, any questions of those giving testimony? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Moore, thank you for your presentation. And as I read the bill or the amendment in the bill, you may be able to answer this question or the sponsors may be able to do this, but it states requires a voter who wishes to vote in a primary election to have their political party affiliation recorded on their permanent record. Permits political parties to allow unaffiliated voters to participate in their primary election. What would happen based on this language if, let's say, the Republican Party said, we do not want you, we will not allow you or permit you to vote in our primary, and at the same time, the Democratic Party would say the same thing. We will not allow you or to permit you to vote in our primary. What happens to that unaffiliated voter?
My understanding is that person would not get to vote in the primary and would have to wait till the general election.
Okay. Thank you.
I would agree, and as my colleague here shared, that would really disenfranchise voters across the state. I teach Gen Z students in a university, and I can tell you that they are already disenfranchised and feeling left out of the democratic process, and this would further keep them from being able to exercise their rights to vote.
Are both of you aware already? I assume both of you, whether you like them or not, respect our election laws and our election integrity. Are both of you aware right now under current state law it's illegal for independents and parties affiliated with opposite party to vote in that person's primary now? It's a violation of the law. If an independent votes in the Republican primary or a Democrat votes in the primary or a Republican votes in the Democrat primary, it's illegal currently.
Right, and as you've noted before, it's not being enforced. And I think that's an important question to wrestle with and a path forward for us to have that conversation and how to legally move forward so that we are protecting the integrity of our laws. I think the way to do that so that all voters have access to the ballots is the important part of that conversation.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for being here today. I want to go back off of the question that gentleman to my right asked earlier about, if the Republican Party said they were not going to allow the unaffiliated voters in the Democrat Party, you said that you wouldn't be able to vote. Are you referring to just the primary or the vote period? If it was an August election, you would not be able to vote at all?
My understanding is that I wouldn't be able to vote in the primary.
Right. You'd still be able to vote in your county general election or whatever that is on that day. You just would not have a vote in that particular political party's nominee for the general election.
That I'm not sure of. I believe that this would forbid me from voting for candidates for the General Assembly and Congress.
For the if I may, for the August election, for our local elections, those would be a general election, right, attached to a primary election for the November ballot. So we would only have access to part of the ballot. But as Mr. Camilleri said, the elections are chosen in the primary in the state with a supermajority. So I'd like to vote for Republicans. I just don't intend to register necessarily with a Republican or a Democrat party because I find policies on both sides to be very helpful. And I'm looking for the person with character who can actually make a way forward for our state to be helpful.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you. Yes, well, my question would be, would it be right for someone if I was to go as a Republican? We're not registered now. I have to, when I go in to vote in that August election, I have to ask for a ballot. And if I don't ask for either primary ballot for the state primary, then I just get the general election ballot for my county offices. If I have predominantly voted Republican for the last 12, 15, 18, whatever years, is it right for me to go in and pull a Democrat ballot because I know that there's two candidates on the Democrat ticket for state Senate? And I know that one is a weaker candidate than the other. I know that a Republican would have a chance at beating the weaker Democrat candidate because one is very strong and the other is weak. Would it be fair for myself and other Republicans, maybe the local Republican Party, to say, hey, our candidate is a shoe-in, he's the only one on the ballot, or she, let's go and vote for this weaker Democrat candidate because we have a chance, our Republican candidate has a chance of beating that candidate. Does that not disenfranchise people from their votes? Because there are those that really, on the Democrat side, that believe that this is the one candidate, or they may have chosen the other candidate, but for a party itself to mobilize and go in, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we, in this country, we believe in one person, one vote, so folks should get to vote for whoever they want. Given the drawing of district and congressional lines in this state, it would take, in my opinion, an incredible amount of electioneering by either party to get that accomplished in these districts that are either heavily blue or heavily red.
And I think it depends on how you define a weaker candidate. But as someone who's run for office, you know how hard it is to mobilize and to mobilize people to get actually out and vote and exercise. And so it would take I appreciate the concept of the question. I think practically speaking for voters and what is capable for parties at this moment, just getting people to the ballot box is the challenge, and limiting that in any way is what we would like to see voted against. But I think if we start to see that, then it's time to come back with new legislation. But I don't think that that's really what's driving this bill.
Yes.
Thank you. I've had where folks have reached out to me over the last 2 years and brought up examples where candidates were picked off by members of other parties that openly admitted to going in and voting, crossover voting, where they mobilized, where they had political party meetings, where they said, hey, our candidate is a shoe-in, we're going to vote, we're going to get people to the polls to vote for candidate X in this particular party because they're a weaker candidate and we can defeat them. Or this is, we're going to come in because we want this candidate because they can defeat, we want to use them and vote in their primary to defeat this other candidate in here. So, you know, a lot of people that I've spoken with, they get more energized on a local level about their local politics when they have those county general elections in August. They come in, and that's where they really focus their attention a lot of times people don't know who their U.S. congressman is or their U.S. senator when they come in to vote, but they want to vote in their local election. They know that they have maybe a House member or a Senate member that's from their hometown that they are energized and want to vote, and I understand that completely. Maybe they've been a lifelong Democrat, but they knew the boy from Sunday school or the lady from work that they wanted to vote for, and I get that, and I understand that. But I also understand where political parties want to maintain their sovereignty, if you will, over their candidates and who they put forth on the ballot when it comes to the state general election in November. I do also recognize that there is other methods in place that could take place where a particular district, instead of having the primary for a state office such as state senate or state house, where they could have a nominating caucus. And in that instance right there, that would certainly take it out of that August primary. There would be no votes cast. So what are your thoughts on that, if you will?
I think given that private parties, parties are private, having a caucus like that outside of taxpayer-funded elections would probably be a better way to go.
I agree with that completely, and that allows for the leadership of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party in Tennessee to choose their own leadership and to deal with the disagreements within the party. I think that that's fair and that is just. I would just say, as a qualitative researcher, I would be curious to hear the number of stories coming from people who have rigged an election by voting across party versus those who have not even gone to an August election because they don't feel like their vote is going to count in Tennessee.
I would add, if I could, to your point about voters reaching out to you and mentioning examples of folks voting for an opposite party, perhaps a stronger candidate or weaker candidate, get that weaker candidate into the general election against their party. I'm certain that probably does happen, but I'm also certain that doesn't influence the outcome of probably most General Assembly and congressional elections in this state based on this data, and I'm happy to share it with you guys afterwards. Yeah.
Yes.
I would say, just from some of the research that I've done looking through records of, who voted, and you can go back and pull and see, how often these people vote in the primaries, and someone, and I'll use this for an example, that had voted Democrat had pulled Democrat ballots in the August primaries for a number of years consecutively, and then they voted Republican this one year. I certainly hope no one ever did that in the races that I was in, but I have seen data from other House districts where this happens, where people who have always voted Democrat, they come in and vote Republican for a certain candidate. And in one instance, I've seen that candidate actually win that primary. And it was based off of what we could see where the crossover votes were. And you look at the data, and it's indisputable, because you can see people have voted Democrat for the last 10-plus elections, and the one time they vote Republican, they voted for one particular candidate. So, another thing that I think about is what is the purpose of the August election? It's the county general election. Those elections will take place whether there are names on the ballot for House seats or for a governor's primary, anything. Those elections are going to take place. If we were really going to, looking at that, I don't know that it's, what the actual cost is to the taxpayer, because they're already having those elections. I know a lot of times you put initiatives on the ballot in November, maybe a constitutional amendment, it's about $10,000, and that's statewide, because they're adding that additional question or whatever it is on the ballot. So what is the actual cost to the taxpayers to have the county primaries on the state primaries on the August ballot? I don't know. I don't have that answer for you.
I would suggest that the cost isn't to keep the system as it is. There would be the additional cost if we change the system per this bill.
And one more thought. I teach business ethics at Lipscomb University, and last week I was teaching about unfair advantage. And to my students, kind of wrestling with the question of ethics, what we discussed was you don't have to remove your advantage to others, as long as you are making the access to that advantage fair for everyone. And so it doesn't mean that you have to lower yourself to a point that you don't have the same privilege that you had before. But how do you make the advantage as fair as possible for everyone else? So just from an ethical perspective today, as you're thinking about it, I would love to see that.
Are any further questions of those giving testimony? If not, we have more to give testimony. Seeing no more.
I'll stop. Thank you. Thank y'all for
Thank you, Representative.
conversing with me.
Thank you for coming up. We have next group. We have Ann Featherstone, Tina Toppin, and James Garrett. And I was remiss if you could also each of you tell your name and your county. I introduced them before, but I didn't log them in. Make sure your mics are all on with a red light.
Oh, go ahead. Chairman Rudd, committee members, my name is Ann Featherston, and I am a resident of Fentress County, House District 38, and a founder of Tennessee Action Group of Fentress County, a grassroots group formed 2 years ago of constitutional patriots who figured out the best defense against the federal debacle was to engage on multiple levels to protect the citizens and sovereignty of Tennessee. The first research I came across in March of 2021 was Trevor Luden's opinion article on 9 starter steps to save America from socialism. He lists as number 4, close the Republican primaries. He calls this a no-brainer. Why? Because open primaries can lead to an opportunity to vote in the weakest candidate. We could have seen that happen nationally in 2022 when Wyoming Republican Liz Cheney publicly solicited Democratic voters to vote for her in the Republican primaries. Again, also, the New York Times reported then that the Democrats surged into GOP primaries in several states and named Colorado Democrat voters admitting to registering as unaffiliated to vote against Republican Representative Lauren Boebert. Considering the last 3 years, it seems there is little beyond the realm of possibility, and perhaps Tennessee could face a surge someday. So in Section 5 of this bill, there is an option for either party in the call for election to decide whether to allow unaffiliated voters to vote in a particular primary. Now, we may not have had a surge yet, but there have been reports of ripples. In 2013, the Tennessee Star newspaper reported on a radical left organization distributing a literature piece targeting Tennessee Democrats to vote for a particular Republican legislative candidate because he supported their agenda. And it happened again in 2022. Open primaries can dilute the vote. This bill has been repeatedly introduced to the General Assembly. In 2018, GOP chair of Williamson County, in supporting a similar bill, said, "It's a little disingenuous to allow someone to select a candidate for a party they don't identify with and who they will not vote for in the general election, just like Alabama doesn't let Tennessee pick its head coach." In 2019, this election committee approved House Bill 1273 on closing primaries, and at that time, Tennessee's own Republican Party State Executive Committee passed an overwhelming vote to close our primaries, and they did so again in 2022. In a 2022 survey by Tennessee Conservative News with a circulation of 18,000, a social media following of 50,000, 97% of the respondents indicated they want to close the primaries. According to the Tennessee Constitution, as I understand it, our legislators rule Tennessee according to and by the will of the people. Committee members, the people ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Next, I believe Tina Toppin.
Tobin.
Tobin, excuse me.
Okay, it's okay. Good afternoon. I'm Tina Tobin from Sumner County, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. For many years, I've helped local candidates with their campaigns. But in 2022, in addition to helping candidates, I decided to run for county commissioner. Although I came up short, I knocked on over 3,000 doors, and it was an incredible experience to hear how those voters view our primaries. As we all know, many voters only vote in presidential elections. That number is followed by voters who only vote in the November general election, and in my county that runs at about 50%. Then we drop down to 18% for the state and federal primary, and about 14% for the county primary. If our current method of voter registration encouraged voter turnout, the voter turnout in primaries would not be so low. On a personal note, when I ran for commissioner, I lost my Republican primary by 19 votes. There were 46 documented crossover votes that were cast. I saw the importance of party registration before that, but now I feel it personally. And I do wonder how many more elections across the state are impacted by this. Now, one thing that I especially enjoyed when I was campaigning was speaking with new voters, and this bill will help us to get information to new voters in a timely manner. It's crucial that new voters get information regarding candidates, issues, and even the voting process. Having new voters register with a political party will help new voters to get this information as soon as possible. Under our current system, most parties and candidates wait until that person has an established voting record. Then, once they've seen how they vote in the primaries, they include them in their campaign efforts. So having new voters register with the party eliminates that lag period that we have between when that voter registers and when that voter is getting the information that they need regarding the primary election. Reaching out to new voters is especially important because most people who are new to Tennessee have lived in states where primaries are run very differently. Some voters are expecting ballots to automatically be mailed to them, and other voters have never heard of having a separate primary for the county and for the state and federal. These differences require that candidates and parties spend time educating new voters so that they are fully informed about an upcoming primary. Although selecting a political party is an extra step when registering to vote, I believe that the benefit of new voters more quickly becoming familiar with candidates, with issues, and with our voting process will encourage them to come out and vote in those primaries. Thank you for your time.
Next, Mr. Garrett.
Good afternoon. My name is James Garrett. I'm a resident of Davidson County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm speaking in favor, of course, of this legislation. Previously on a similar bill, we have heard testimony that if party registration legislation such as this presented here today passes, those registered as independents or unaffiliated will not be able to vote in a party's primary election. Actually, that is correct. It is correct because under current law, Section 2-7-115B1, the voter must be a bona fide member of and affiliated with the political party in order to vote in that party's primary. This legislation continues that with the requirement, plus it gives voters and parties some additional options. We have also heard how it is easy for you, the committee, to vote against this type of legislation because it contains the language, quote, allegiance to the political party, unquote, as if this was new detrimental language. This language is not new because, again, in Section 2-7-115B2 says, quote, a registered voter is entitled to vote in a primary if the voter declares allegiance to the political party in whose primary the voter seeks to vote, unquote. And this legislation does not change that requirement. We have heard testimony if party registration such as this passes, it would limit the voters' choices of candidates. Considering recent elections, as was previously mentioned, but considering recently elections for members of the Tennessee House of Representatives, the truth of the matter is the parties themselves have done a pretty good job in doing just that. Looking at the last two August primaries, in 2020, the Republican Party had 19% contested elections, and the Democrat Party 11%. In 2022, the Democrat Party had 9% contested elections, while the Republican Party had 22%. This means approximately 85% of the races either had no qualified candidate or were uncontested. This legislation does nothing to limit a voter's opportunity to participate in a primary election. And for those who want to remain unaffiliated, this bill, in Section 5 of the bill, gives them more of an opportunity to participate than the current law currently allows. We have heard testimony that this is a closed primary bill. The National Council of State Legislatures has defined that as where you have to be a party member to vote. Only a party member can vote.
Mr. Garrett, you're out of time. If you'd close, thank you.
I am closed then. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any questions of those giving testimony? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the young lady in the middle, I didn't get your name. I apologize for that.
Tina Tobin.
Yes. You mentioned that you were at one point a candidate for office.
Yes.
And in that situation, there was a crossover of Democrats voting in that primary.
Yes.
May I ask you, who is the current representative of that district, and what is their party affiliation?
Oh, it's William Lamberth, and he's a Republican.
Okay. Forgive me for that. I'm not the Democrat up here, right? And you know, as I was sitting here, and I was thinking, you know, what are we really talking about? Should I support this legislation or not? And at this point, I'm not really sure, because I almost come to the conclusion that some of my members were saying Democrats crossing over into a Republican primary and almost not only influencing but controlling the outcome of that. You know, if that's the case, Democrats have done a very poor job in this state, a very poor job. Because right now we have a super, and of course, Democrats are breaking the law when they do that. It's absolutely amazing to me, because 9 out of 10 times, whenever this situation has happened anywhere in anybody's district, the outcome is a Republican usually win that seat. So I've been trying to figure out, is this a Democratic issue and fault, or is this an internal Republican primary kind of thing that's going on, and Democrats are being blamed for it? I'm trying to figure it out right now. What are we really talking about in reference to this legislation? Then I'm thinking, maybe I should support this thing. And it may give a little bit leverage in the future to more Democratic, I don't know, support and wins. I don't know. No questions.
Any other questions, the witnesses? I would, seeing none, I would say that thank you for testifying today. And I think, Mr. Garrett, are you the current chairman of the Republican Party of Davidson County?
As of February the 11th, I chose not to run, so
Okay.
I am the immediate past chairman.
Okay. Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
I guess this bill, as I understand it, and I'll ask Chairman Keeston when he gets back, we can discuss the bill in depth. But I know as the chairman of the state party, Scott Golden, testified last week on another bill, and it was brought out that there has definitely been a concerted effort lately in Madison and Knox and some others for crossover voting, and even in the printed form and advertising. So how much of effect that's had, I don't know. I'm not an expert on those counties, but it is something that is occurring. And I guess the one thing, as a longtime grassroots party activist myself before I was ever elected to this assembly, is under current state law, it forces me to register as an independent, which I'm not. So I would like the opportunity to register in my party, and I can't do that now under the current state law. But if there's no further questions, we will go back into session. Thank you. Please turn your mics off, and thank you for testifying, and thank you for the previous testimony. We are back in session. Chairman Kiesling, I believe your bill has, two parts? The first part is it allows people to register by party affiliation if they so choose, and that one-time registration is what the one-time cost is. then it would allow the political parties to choose whether they're going to close or not close their primaries in each county.
That, yes,
Yes.
that is my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions of Chairman? Yes, Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Keesley, this is a local party decision. So if the Republican Party of Blount County decides that they've got two candidates, and within the party, there's a feeling that maybe their friend would have a better chance that they're close to socially, this time we'll open it. And then next time we'll close it. Is there any way that this could be addressed? Basically, it's the same thing that we're saying is happening now, that we're having crossover votes. It then becomes a social clique issue, basically. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Keesley.
I'm going to, if it would be okay with, if you would agree, Chairman, I would you mind going out of session and letting our legal answer that? Then of course, per the bill itself, because I'm not sure that is it addressed?
We can go out of session, and Chairman Moon can ask legal to verify something that your question you have about the bill. We are out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to legal. Help me if I've read the text of the bill incorrectly, but does the party locally make the decision if it's a Republican primary for mayor, sheriff, clerk, register of deeds? Does the party locally make the decision to close or to open that primary? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Houston, Legal Services. The bill does not specify that. It just says a political party in its call for election may allow for participation in the party's primary elections by a person who is an unaffiliated voter according to the voter's permanent registration record. So it would be up to the political party. I'm not entirely sure if that would be the local political party or the statewide political party. It's not clear.
Thank you, legal, and thank you. I support your bill, but this concerns me because the way I read it, if it's a local question on the ballot, then the local, just like we did on school board being nonpartisan, the local party determines whether or not it's a partisan or nonpartisan school board election. So, but thank you, legal.
I think the way I interpret the bill, and since it's not empowering county parties to do anything, since the only people that can really empower the county parties are the state parties, that it would be up to the state parties whether they wanted to grant that control to the counties or keep that to themselves, I would assume, since it's not. We have, excuse me, well, I was commenting on legal. Well, any other questions of legal? If not, we are back in session. Any other questions of the sponsor? Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Kiesling, for your bringing this legislation. I also just want to say I like your coat. It looks really good on you today.
I sense coordination here. Any other questions? If not, we will be voting on the bill. Seeing no other questions, we are voting on HB 1045 by Kiesling. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. It goes on to full local.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have HB 0183 by Chairman Whitson. We have a question second on the bill. Do we have any amendments? I believe you have one. Which one are you attaching?
I have Amendment 4425, which makes the bill.
That's what we have. It does make the bill. I suggest we attach the amendment to the bill and then discuss the amended bill. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The amendment is attached to the bill. Please tell us about your amended bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is designed to simplify and clarify certain procedures for the Registry of Election Finance. These are considered to be procedural rather than substantive changes and are intended to simplify the code or make certain procedures match others currently in use. In many instances, these changes are intended to outline certain existing requirements by statute rather than by rulemaking. The procedures affected by this legislation includes procedures for reporting campaign finance data, treatment and maintenance of campaign funds, addressing sworn complaints, the assessment of civil penalties, addressing administrative proceedings, and the annual reports by the registry.
Any questions? If not, we have a request for testimony. And seeing none at this time, we will go out of session. We have a Director of Campaign Finance, Bill Young, and Lance Frizzell, and as Ms. Topping, also Laura Topping, legal counsel, are testifying. And please make sure your mics are on and tell us your name and position and who you represent.
Thank you, Chairman Rudd. Bill Young, the Executive Director of the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance. Seated to my left is Lauren Topping, our General Counsel, and to her left is Lance Frizzell, our Assistant Director. We basically asked to testify just to answer any questions that any members might have regarding this bill. I think we've touched base with all the members of this subcommittee about this bill, met with many of you personally. Again, these are, as Chairman Whitson said, are procedural changes that after 3 years as director of the Bureau, I think will help make us more efficient, more effective. There is nothing that we feel is substantive here, and I am open to any questions, Mr. Chairman, you or any other member of the committee have.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is somewhat of a cleanup bill from last year's legislation?
Yes, part of it is, Mr. Chairman, particularly the part that deals with some of the suggestions that we made last year that weren't included in the legislation last year. And again, ours is more procedural. I think last year's was really more of a substantive change to increase transparency, as I understand.
And as I understand it, the amended version is the Senate amended version, and it is the one that was worked out to make all the parties happy, plus it corrected a typo.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
We have any questions of the team here? Seeing none. Have no questions. I appreciate you coming over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here as always.
Hope the tickets weren't too expensive.
It was not.
We are back in session.
Thank you, Lauren.
Chairman Whitson. Is there any questions of the sponsor of the bill?
Thank you, Bill.
We have a question on the bill. Seeing no objections, we are voting on HB 0183 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. It goes to full vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee.
And next up is HB 0732 by Representative Barrett. We have a motion and second on the bill. Please tell us about your bill. I see there's no amendments, is there?
No, Mr.
amendments.
Chairman.
Tell us about your bill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the motion and the second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill addresses the current situation for candidates running for office in Tennessee where the parties are charging fees as access to be on a primary ballot. This bill would seek to eliminate and prohibit any party, any state party from charging a fee for running for any office in the state of Tennessee. Currently, in the Republican Party, you have to pay anywhere from $25 to run for county commission or constable, all the way up to $5,000 just to be on the ballot to run for governor. This bill would prohibit that.
I believe it doesn't your bill. It doesn't prohibit you from running for any office, only on the Republican primary.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions of the witness of excuse me, the sponsor. I've had so much testimony today, calling the witnesses. Chairman Moon.
I guess I'm the interrogator today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Representative Barrett, thank you for the bill. My only dilemma is, on the one hand, we say that we must let the party have their own rules and policies and procedures. And then on the other hand, now we want to say, no, this one's out of bounds. So I just want to know how we rationalize, or can you, rationalization is the wrong term, how explain to me why I think if a person can't afford, I think in the party rule, there's a fund set aside. So if a person who's truly can't raise the funds, then the party will provide that funding for them. But help me out a little bit on why, on the one hand, we should be able to do something, on the other we shouldn't. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The sponsor.
Well, I thank the gentleman from Blount County for the question. In Tennessee, in our Constitution, we prohibit political tests for access to political office. The nature of these fees, they create an obstacle and they put a barrier in the way that citizens of this state have to overcome in order to be able to run. Now, I appreciate mentioning that there's a process in the bylaws, but that's not required. Those bylaws could be changed at any time to remove that process to apply for a hardship. And that hardship's not required to be granted. There's no codified rule in the law that requires a party to grant access or create some way for access to be given for those that can't afford it. So we've already seen in the last election cycle a candidate who won an election, I believe in your district, as a write-in candidate, was certified as the winner, and then that election, the people who elected that candidate, their candidate was removed by the party because he didn't pay $100 in a timely fashion. That's not right in Tennessee. That shouldn't be what Tennessee stands for. The spirit of the law and under the Constitution is that we want our elections to be open to all. I would pose a question back to the gentleman. If we don't have the ability to govern these types of restrictions and these types of rules that the parties put in place, what's to limit the party from making that fee $5,000, $15,000, $50,000? If the suggestion is that we as a legislature have no right to intercede to make sure that citizens of Tennessee have open access to our ballot system and to be able to run for office in Tennessee, then I would ask the question why we're here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Chairman Moon, go ahead.
Thank you, sponsor. And I believe, though, when this was brought up before the executive committee of the party, it was nearly unanimous vote to adopt the fees. And there again, it's the balance. And your point is well taken. The person that qualified under the write-in deadline. And that's something that none of us sit on the SEC. But again, thank you for bringing the bill. It's something that needs to be addressed, and it not only addresses it for the party that all but one member belongs to, but it would apply to all parties. So thank you, Mr. Sponsor, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative. I wholeheartedly believe that each party should have their own autonomy in making the decisions and determinations as to who is eligible to be on their ballot as a candidate for a position, whether, state office, local office, whatever the case may be. Completely fine with them saying that you've got to vote X amount of times in the certain way to be bona fide, and bona fide status is 30-plus years or what have you ever in a row of voting. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I've always had issue with this particular instance is when they put on the candidates that you had to pay money out of your pocket to be even considered to be on the ballot. Now, even in one particular party, when they come in, you pay your money. If they throw you off the ballot for some reason, there's a refund. But still, I don't think it's right for any political party, because you hit the nail on the head. It's $500 today. What's to say 20 years from now it's not $20,000, and then it becomes a point where good people who want to serve the people of this state do not have an opportunity to do so because they can't financially afford to do it. And you knock out a lot of really good folks. I'm not saying people that have money are bad folks. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but it limits the field of opportunity for people to put their name out there, to be considered by their constituency to serve them in various roles. And so I will be supporting your bill today, and I don't think that it takes away from the party system whatsoever. But I wanted to say that, so thank you.
I'd say this, it does not in any way, shape, or form deny people's right to a ballot. They could still run as an independent if they don't want to meet their party background. Also, we fringe a lot. We come pretty close to telling political parties what they can and can't do within their own party. We also have stated in state law, we leave it up to the state parties to define bona fide status, and they have to meet the bona fide status of their party. And they have strict rules of who can be a member of their party and who can vote in their party, and qualifications to run. I think it's 3 out of every 4 primaries, or been active in the party, or both. And constitutionally speaking, we're limited what we can do directly to the internal workings of a political party. If we were to pass legislation like this, which I personally view as unconstitutional, because it's violating the constitutional rights to freedom of assembly. We can't tell a private organization who can and can't be members of their party and what their bona fide status is. That's kind of crossing the line, in some opinion, in mine, that we're telling people what they can and can't charge, who they have to let run. The next will be passing laws stating, well, you have to let Democrats run in your primary and be members of your party. And we're just limited what they do. They are a non-government, non-supported private entity, and I think at this point we may be crossing over constitutionally suspect of what we can and cannot tell them to do and who can run, because are we going to pass a law stating what their bona fide status is, that 2 out of 4 and they can run in their primary? We're kind of limited what we can do, and I just think this may be crossing a line. We can always ask legal if we need to. But Chairman Crawford, I believe you're next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for the sponsor. Did we pass legislation last year or the year before that allowed the parties to charge to do this?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay. Then, but yet, we didn't have a law that addressed this. We're telling a private organization what they can do and what they can say meets their qualification rules or whatever. I don't really understand why this. Can you tell me why you're bringing this bill? Have we had a problem or?
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing this bill because as an attorney who understands the law and the Constitution in Tennessee, I see this as an unconstitutional obstacle to access to running for office in Tennessee. I see unfettered ability of, as you say, a private entity to control and manipulate who gets put on the ballot in Tennessee. And as I believe every member of this committee would acknowledge that not a single independent has ever been elected to this body. So party membership matters. Being able to run in a party primary to be a candidate in the general election as a member of a party matters. Saying that you can run as an independent does not mean that you have equal access to the ballot. And so I think there are things that this body, this General Assembly can do to govern how parties govern themselves. For instance, if the parties want to charge a membership fee that's equal across the board as part of their analysis of whether or not someone is bona fide, sure, it's an equal opportunity. But when you start changing the goal line as to what it is that you have to do in order to run for different offices, you're creating a higher bar each and every time that you raise that. And again, as Chairman Doggett pointed out, there's no restriction as to how high this bar goes. So you have a private group of people telling the citizens of Tennessee who they're going to have the choice to elect or vote for, and that's not right, not in Tennessee, in my opinion.
Chairman.
I apologize, Mr. Sponsor. I must not ask the question correctly. I want to know, have we had an issue why you're bringing this bill? Have we had somebody that's complained about the price, or somebody that couldn't run because of the price? Or I guess that's what I'm asking.
Go ahead.
Well, I think I just, in talking to Representative Moon, illustrated an issue to where the payment of $100 caused a party to decide to overturn a certified election result based solely on whether or not payment of $100 was done in what the party considered to be a timely manner. That's a problem.
Go ahead, Chairman.
Did the gentleman or female, whoever was running for that particular office, was they made aware that they had to pay the $100?
Go ahead.
I've not talked to that gentleman personally. I can only answer that question based on circumstantial evidence and hearsay, and this not being a court of law. My understanding is that the gentleman was made aware that the $100 would be due, but was also told that it would not have to be paid until after the election.
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is, when I've talked to people about this particular bill, they have told me that in the past they've had elections to where, I'm just making this up, but let's say somebody was running for county mayor, and they end up having 24, 27 people in that race running for county mayor. All right? And some of them were just running. I don't know how many times I look in the paper when the governor's being elected, and you see all kinds of names, people running for governor. They know they're not going to win, but they wanted to get their name out there. So they say this stops that problem. So I'm kind of in between. I don't know what to do, because if we've not had the problem, we're coming up with a solution for something that's not broke. Here in Tennessee,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you was finished.
Tennessee, we have it's the easiest state in the whole country to vote. It's the hardest state to cheat. So a lot of the rules and regulations we have in place, as my friend to the right here said, has given us a supermajority, has given us a Republican governor, has given us a lot of things, and I don't understand why anytime you tinker with something on a motor or whatever, you know that, you take a chance on messing it up. And this just kind of scares me. So anyway, I'm sorry for taking.
I'm sorry. Sponsor.
Well, I would respond with this. There's a lot of discussion among the General Assembly right now about choice of schools. And choice is good. Competition is good. As a conservative, I believe that competition is good. I don't have a problem with 15 people running in a county commission race or a county mayor race. I think that's great. I think it's great for the people that are voting to have more options to choose from. And I personally trust that the people will choose the right person. That's the whole point of the election process, is let them sort it out, not a group of people that meet once a year that nobody knows who they are.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in all the other states where the state parties and either party have charged the fee to run, that has been upheld, that none of that's been overturned. When I was on the state executive committee, I always voted against that, but it did pass the executive committee. I haven't been on it since I've been elected, but here's the two things. Based on numerous Supreme Court decisions of freedom of assembly and controlling what a committee does within its own, to determine its members and its candidates, they have a right to do that. If we were to pass this, we also could then, based on the bill, could go back and tell them that their bona fide status is incorrect, and we're going to lower it to 1 out of every 4 primaries you can run as a Republican. And I think that would also, there's no reason why there's no difference in the two, what we're doing. If we're going to start telling them to qualify for office, and as far as the different fees, all the different offices are bigger, covers more territory, maybe charge more, some are paid nothing. And since they're not violating any federal law of any protected class to have access to run, I don't think they're discriminating against anyone based on that. But I think, like I said, I think we're going down very, very dangerous waters, because the next thing we do, if we pass this, we can change the bona fide status and change who can be a member of a party. And I would say it's almost assured that the party will start challenging it. I'd like to go at this point briefly out of session, if there's no objections, and ask legal what they feel, the constitutionality of it is, because the parties have won in every single case. Both parties have won every single case when we try to tell them what to do with their internal membership and bona fide status and workings of their party. We'll go out of session to ask legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Houston from Legal Services. So, in researching this particular bill, I found a case, U.S. Supreme Court case, California Democratic Party v. Jones, where the Supreme Court stated that our cases vigorously affirm the special place the First Amendment reserves for and the special protection it accords, the process by which a political party selects a standard bearer who best represents the party's ideologies and preferences. Under that reasoning, I think by prohibiting a political party from requiring a fee, the state may violate the party's First Amendment rights of freedom of association.
Are there any questions of the legal? Representative Miller and Chairman Crawford. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So based on that interpretation, let's say if, in fact, the state of Tennessee said we wanted to put a cap on what the parties can charge, no more than $100. Would that be constitutional or legal?
I'm not sure that changes the analysis at all. I still think it would be constitutionally suspect.
Chairman Crawford.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can legal break that down a little simpler for me to understand exactly what you're saying? Because this is an important decision. We need to make the right decision here. I just need to understand it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is when a political party is choosing who represents the party. That is exactly what the freedom of association and the First Amendment is all about. And by a state telling them that the rules about which you can declare someone being bona fide and being able to represent that party, I believe that it would infringe upon that party's First Amendment associational rights.
Yes, Chairman.
All right, I guess this question is for legal too. In the testimony from the sponsor there, he said something about if we charged a straight across the board fee for everyone, for membership or something, how does that affect the decision we're making on this?
Well, that would be something separate from what this bill is after. This is payment of a fee to run as a candidate of that political party. I believe a party could validly have some sort of fee to join the party.
I think the sponsor, when he mentioned the word membership, as he described what he was talking about, I think he was talking about to run for office, not to actually be a member of the party. I'm not sure, but we'll go back into session. Any other questions of legal? If not, we'll go back into session. There's the sponsor. You can clear up what you meant by membership, and I don't know if that's the word you meant to use.
No, that is exactly what I was trying to do is define the dichotomy between charging a membership to be a member of the party as part of a bona fide definition versus charging a pay-to-play fee that you have to pay in order to get on the ballot. We're talking about two different things. A party can charge a fee, $50 a month, $100 a year, whatever it wants to charge to be a member. But when it goes and starts charging an access fee for you to be run as a candidate, that's where I think they're violating the law, and we as a General Assembly have a duty to protect the citizens of the state from that.
And I think it's fair to say that the party does not actually charge a fee to be a member of the party. It's a voluntary. You can be Republican and vote in Republican primaries and not pay a membership dues, or you can join different levels of what you can afford to pay to contribute, and that money usually goes to the operation of the party or to fund its PAC program for candidates. But there is not an actual required fee. They just asked for the donation. I think both parties just asked people to join at different levels. I think in the Republican Party it goes from $25 up to $5,000 or $10,000, depending on what you can contribute. And that helps them elect candidates and operate. Any other questions? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my question to legal, and when legal said that would be somewhat suspect, I was trying to really find a compromise because in this bill you want to just eliminate the fee. And I'm thinking, is there any way we could cap it? This is the minimum, this is the maximum, or whatever. Because this, hypothetically, and it was mentioned by a representative, at any point in time, based on legal and based on the conversation, any party can come back and say your fee is increased for the next election, and it's no limit. And the state of Tennessee can't do anything about that. That doesn't seem right.
Well, the legal, to clear up one thing, legal, I think, said that the bill didn't directly mention caps, but if it's constitutional suspect to tell the parties they can't charge, then we couldn't put a cap on it either. And like I said earlier, there's absolutely no difference in this bill, in my opinion, that if we can do this and tell them they can't run for office, then we can redefine the bona fide status of what it is to join or run in each respective party, and that would definitely not fly. But Mr. Sponsor.
With the chairman's concerns about the constitutionality of this provision, if this subcommittee were willing to pass the bill on through to full committee, the sponsor would be committed to obtain an AG's opinion and submit that to the full committee whenever we put this on notice.
We normally, when there's a question like that, or there's or even a major amendment, which you're not proposing, just opinion, we usually don't pass that on to full. They like this settled in sub. Well, we hadn't voted yet. Anybody can make a proposal here, but we're just discussing right now. Are there any other discussions on the bill, or any other proposals, or any questions illegal or anything? If not, let's see. You have Representative Miller. You have more questions? Okay, I'm sorry. Is that a motion? Yes. Do I hear a second on the motion to roll it? What is your motion exactly?
Roll for 2
roll it for 2 weeks. Do I hear a second on that motion? I hear a second. All right, the motion is all ayes are yeas are approval to roll it for 2 weeks. Nays are to deny it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. It is rolled for 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to take this time to recognize, oh, by the way, excuse me, HB 0732 by Barrett is rolled for 2 weeks. I want to take this time to recognize Leadership Rutherford, the members that have been in the audience. Appreciate you being here and coming. Well, that concludes today's business. Are there any other announcements by members of the committee before we adjourn? If not, to hear a motion to adjourn. So moved. We are hereby adjourned.